Whew, it's really hot today. I think they're like, we should expect a high of 30, which is weird. I've noticed that like ever since I got here, the heat feels more hot than back home in Lagos. And I don't understand why. Because I was talking to some people and they were like, it's a humidity thing, but it's comparable humidity. I think maybe like my body has just adjusted. Anyway, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a new video. Today, I'm going to try to keep it like have my eye on the time really short because nothing much has happened. So let's get into it. Welcome back. Today is just going to be another life update, like no frills, no stress. I am coming up on the 8th week. Oh my god, it's so hot. Breathing. This was in the freezer. That is how hot I am. I wet it and put it in the freezer for a while. Okay. So I'm coming up on the 8th week of placement. It's been eye-opening. Like, with this placement, I'm not really doing a lot of what you would randomly say or well normally say is dietetics or like a lot of patient stuff. I am doing a lot of the other things that surround patient work. So I'm learning a lot, transferable skills and all that. I'm doing a lot of phone stuff, emails, research, yeah, which is nice. At the same time, not so nice, but we move. As I said, keeping it short. Although I am actually finding it interesting. I am finding it. Depending on who I'm with, I've got some stuff in the pipeline. I have been told to prepare some stuff, which I feel is nice that they, well, if not in the aspect of them trying to get me to learn, but like because I did it once and they saw it was nice, they felt that is like a strong point, a strength for me. So I'm getting to do more of the presentation stuff. So yes, hashtag public health education. Oh, maybe I should have just gone and done public health straight away, but like, no. I like the fact that I can do it, but I also like the fact that it's not all I do. What else has happened to me? I've stopped going to the gym. It's simply a motivation thing. I just don't. I get the idea that you should self-motivate. So like, if you don't feel you push yourself, but I'm just like, right now, not really in that frame of mind. So I think I haven't gone for like I think this week will make it 3 weeks. But I'm like, you know what? Just leave that. I'm perfectly fine. We hope that when we move next month, that change kind of like spurs on and like lights the spark again. But we don't know. Speaking of moving, after all the realtors that I called in like March were like, oh no, if you're looking to move in September, you start looking around July. Guess what? July is still early. All the houses that I'm like, oh, this is nice, they're like, okay, this might not be still on the market when you want to move in. So all you can do is like call. If it's on the market, lucky you. If it's not. So I'm not doing anything right now. I'm waiting till the beginning of August to start making calls again. There was this flat, not in like the best area, but for the money, I personally think was the best flat out of all the other ones I've seen. So like, fingers crossed that is still available, or that realtor has something really similar in a better area. Fingers crossed. Through God, all things work. What today is going to be very random. I'm trying to keep it really short. I think I've spoken for like 3 minutes. In relation to the gym thing, I'm becoming better with accepting what my body looks like. I think I look hot. I think I'm a 10, but I think everybody thinks they're a 10. But I think I'm a 10. In self-delusion terms, like if we're talking reality, I think I'm like a 7, not 5, no. I'm too good looking to be that average. Yes, that's what I believe. This whole talk about like body confidence and body positivity is coming from a place of there is this guy, like because of the gym, I was following a lot of like fitness content and fitness influencers on Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that. And it was nice to see what you could look like. But I know it's a joke because like it's reels and Instagram is not apparently a video platform. But there was this reel that's like, are you ready to get some protractors and slacks? And like the writing will be like, big muscles, people looking at you, and like you're getting slacks and it's body dysmorphia. And I'm like, I don't think I'm ready for that. And that led me to this other guy's content, which is more his mental health, body positivity content, which I'm really vibing with. He was featured in Attitude for his body positivity mental health advocacy. Or well, should I call it advocacy? Yeah, advocacy. Speaking of Attitude, it's a magazine. I don't want to go into details before, but anyway, I was talking with my mum a couple of days ago. Sorry. And out of the blue, she brings up, like, hope I didn't go to Oxford for Pride. And I'm like, no, it was a colleague, it was a colleague thing, just like a student hangout. And she was like, well, I was like, yes, June was Pride Month, but that was in the US. Birmingham Pride is happening in September. And I was just like, are you serious? This led to a convo with some friends that they were like, oh, my mom thinks I'm gay. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I believe that she is Christian enough to believe that after the incident of junior secondary school, which I'll probably do a story time about that another time, and the deliverance that followed, which let's face it is conversion therapy, that I have been cured. And so what I believe is that she suspects, but she is believing in herself that, oh, I just have an effeminate child, which I am. And that's it. That's what she believes, and that's what we all believe. I am an effeminate guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm trying to tell my friend, like, that is the truth. But is it? I was stonewall pin, for God's sake. Anyways, so in Life Update Part 4 now, we've covered placement, which apparently is going to be a feature basically until I graduate. We've covered house moving, which that part of that update should end in late August. We've covered the fact that there is a possibility that my mom thinks I'm gay, which I'm not. I know I'm wearing have you seen how unfashionable I am? Then what else have we covered? What else is there to cover? Oh, let's just bring this into a story time. Just end it. Okay, the situation as it stands is recently I can't sleep with any light, and I mean absolutely no light. It is bad enough that I can't figure out how to cover the LED light of my extension switch and my TV to automatically obliterate any light. I have to tuck in my curtains so that no light leaks in when I'm asleep. And I spoke to my roommates about it, and I was like, oh, I have to switch off the light in the corridor because it leaks into my room from under the door. And like, to any other person that might seem silly, but like, it's a personal thing. I genuinely can't sleep. And they're like, oh, there's no problem with it. I have no problem with once it's off and I'm asleep, you switch it on when you need it, as long as I'm asleep. I have no problem. Anyway, like a month ago, we had this, I shall call her a foul because it's my personal thing. Anyway, we had this new roommate, comes in, tells us she's 38, she's from India. And I'm like, oh, finally, another mature person in the building. Like, we had a brief chat before she moved in, and we seemed to be vibing on all the things that cleanliness that I vibe with. She comes in and turns out to be an absolute twat. Yes, I'm saying the word twat. And I'm accommodating because I'm like, oh, we all live together. I can't be like, everything has to go my way. No problem. The only thing I now say, okay, you know what, this is all I'm dealing with, is the night. And one wonderful Saturday, I go to sleep by 2 a.m. And unfortunately, I wake up around 3. I see that the light is on. Now, we had previously had the discussion that, oh, she has to wake up early on Saturdays and Sundays because she goes to work. And as I said, I have no problem with that. Switch on the light when I'm asleep. I will switch it off when I need to sleep. And so I come to the kitchen, don't see anybody. The kitchen light is on. I don't switch that off. And I go back to my room and switch off the light, the corridor light. Go to sleep. Just as I'm like drifting off, counting sheep, I hear this banging on my door. Common sense, we're like, oh, there's a fire or something. Quickly go out, nobody's there, and I see that the light is on. So my brain puts 2 and 2 together, and I realize that it is the twat, the 38-year-old twat. And I'm like, I go to her door very nicely. Like, did you wake me up? And she just begins screaming. Just screaming. I'm like, what the fuck? Are you trying to tell me that you can't see? Because I had left the light in the kitchen on, and there is like a small window that allows light to leach through or will leak through. And I just go, I said, please give me a second so I can go and switch off the light so that she can actually tell me that she can't see. She slams the door in my face. I don't like conflict, so I knew I couldn't go to sleep at that point. And I said, you know what, I'm going to wait until she comes out so we can have this discussion. I wait there, I'm browsing through Twitter. I've had this discussion with my mom, and I've come to the understanding that maybe the way I reacted was not very appropriate, but this is just story time, so I'm just telling you what happened. So, then immediately she comes out, I'm like, hello, we need to have this conversation. And she's trying to push past me, and I'm like, oh no, we need to have this conversation. What is in my head is like, it's either you make time to have the conversation now, or I do understand that you need to get to work. You tell me like a sensible person. You don't even have to be 38 to have sense, to be like, oh, I have to go to work, can we do this later? But no, she's just screaming. And she calls the security receptionist downstairs that I'm not letting her through. And I become really irritated because I'm like, I'm 26, you're 38. This is an issue that we should be able to deal with. We're adults. So I'm like, oh, you want to be petty? I can be petty too. So while she's on the phone with the receptionist, I'm like, yeah, I'm waiting for you. It's room A53. So the guy comes, the two of them come. She also calls her friend. And while the guy comes, I'm like, this is what happened, and I need to have this conversation. At this point now, I was no longer actually thinking of like, you know what, we'll have this conversation later. I was pissed that she had escalated it, and I was like, oh, you've escalated it, we must deal with this now. So talking to the guy, and I'm like, oh no, we have to talk about this. So the friend comes in and is like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, bitch. But what comes out of my head? Well, that's what I say in my head, but what comes out of my mouth is like, are you seriously saying that to me? And she, I don't care if that was maturity, but she said something which to me de-escalated the whole thing. She's like, now is not the time, can we do this later? Which, as I said, is really what I was expecting from this fucking 38-year-old in the beginning. So I'm like, okay, you know what, fine. Let the girl pass. And I have a conversation with the receptionist who stays upstairs to explain the whole situation. And he's like, okay, you know what, if anything happens again, and I feel like it's approaching an argument, I should just call downstairs, which to my brain was like, That's like boarding house behavior. That's what you do when you have a situation. You go to tell the housemaster. We're adults. I was like, fine, if that's what you want, I have no problem with it. So he leaves, and I'm just like thinking, and you know what? I'm like, so I send the girl a voice note that, you know what? I am willing to have a calm, civilized conversation with you when you come back. When you come back. But if you don't want to have the conversation, that's your prerogative, and I'm fine with that. But just know that if you don't have the conversation, never try what you did this morning again. Never try it again. Simple. This is me setting boundaries. Like, you don't come bang people's doors in the fucking middle of the night. With that, I think I find some measure of peace. Finally managed to go back to sleep. Wake up around 10, it's a weekend, nothing much to do. And I get a call from management. And I'm like, okay. At first, my brain didn't even think like it was anything. I was just thinking this was a random call. And she's like, oh, hi, David, because that's what it calls me. I'm trying to go back to changing it to Toby because I'm like, I kind of miss the name. Even though my original thing was like, I wouldn't tell people because they couldn't pronounce it, because they would do Toby instead of Toby. And to white people, that might not be a lot. To me, it is, but I miss my name. I miss my name. David is my surname, it's not my name. Anyway, so David, somebody's lodged a complaint against you, and we're just filing it. And she just tells me that, she's like, while she was looking at it, she saw my name and she couldn't believe it. And I was like, thank you, Jesus. Everybody knows me as a chill, really calm, really friendly, open dude. And I'm like, yes, God is laying foundations for me right now. And she's like, oh, so she just wanted to hear. So I explained the whole thing. And she now tells me that the girl has asked to be moved from the room. And my brain was like, I don't care. Like, the Lord is removing people who want to aggravate me from my front. And I'm like, yes. But she's like, they'll probably not move her. Because if everybody who had an argument and wanted to be moved was moved, everybody would be moving. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. Because I'm an adult who understands how the world fucking works. Anyways, end of situation. Now, I had previously had a thing with all my previous roommates, and we had a conversation where they laid out how they felt. I laid out how I felt, and everything was calm. But we came to the understanding that there are times when I may not necessarily be aware of how my actions might be interpreted. So I was like, you know what? If you guys are free, can we talk about this? So you can see from another perspective if maybe I did something wrong. And they're like, oh no, it was fine. That apparently she has had an issue with me for so long that she had actually tried to get them to group together to send an email to management to be like, oh, we have a problem with this boy. But they were like, no, we don't have a problem with him. You have a problem with him. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And they're like, yeah, that it was beginning to feel really personal. And I'm like, I don't know this girl from anywhere. What the fuck do you have with me? Anyways, moving along. A couple of days later, I'm here working from home, and management gives me a call like, hi David, are you free? Do you mind coming downstairs for a talk? I'm like, no problem. Get dressed, go downstairs. And I see her. And I'm like, are we seriously still dealing with this issue? Anyway, we start the whole thing, and she's like, oh, we're here to deal with this, etc., etc. Who would like to go first? And she's like, oh, Deepa, that's the girl's name. Since you brought up the complaint, why don't you go first? And Deepa starts talking, and she mentions this point where the only reason she was able to get out was because the receptionist had to literally get between me and her. I don't remember it like that. As I said, the reason why I was like, oh, you know what, you can go was because the friend was like, what the fuck? My brain's knacking. The friend was like, let's not do this now. We could do this later. And I was like, okay, fine, go. Oh my God, I've skipped. That afternoon, the friend comes in and is like, oh, let's have a conversation. And at first I didn't want to have a conversation because I was like, what's the point? You really, because she was like, oh, I'm not on anybody's side and everything. She now tells me that, oh, in case anybody calls her. And I'm like, who would call you? And she's like, management. And I'm like, why would management call you? You don't live here. You were not involved in the situation. Why exactly? What input do you have to bring into the situation? So I'm like, I don't really want to talk to you. But in the end, because I had spoken to management, and it's not like I was changing my story, I told her the whole thing. She now starts giving me like, oh, why don't I compromise? I'm like, I'm sorry, are you telling her this? Are you giving her any options on how to live with people? And she's like, oh, no. I'm like, well, you know what? And I'm going to end this conversation because it's not productive. Now, fast forward back to this management conflict resolution meeting. So she mentions this whole thing about how the receptionist had to be in between the two of us. And I'm like, oh my God, somebody here is like spewing lies. Let me call this, because I think it was simply me being naive to think that people would tell the truth. So I said, you know what? The friend was there at that point. Why don't we call the friend? And the friend comes here to corroborate this bitch's lie. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? So this is literally me just looking at the friend like, oh my God, are you seriously standing here and lying to my fucking face? Anyway, I'm not like, you know what? Thank you. You can leave. You have no more input in the situation, so you can go. And she's like, no. And I'm like, you know what? Let's play your game. I don't feel comfortable with you being here. Can you leave? And she's like, no. She literally stood there until the manager was like, thank you. Can you go? Before she leaves. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Anyway, back to the parties at hand. So this girl is talking, and she's now talking about how I threatened her and played the voice note. And I was like, are you kidding me? And the manager was like, that's not a threat. And I'm like, yeah. In reality, if somebody threatened you, you would know you were threatened. I simply said, don't bang on my door ever again. How is that a threat? Explain. Anyway, she now goes on to be like, oh, how, etc., like, how she extended her stay here because she liked the place and she liked the people, and they had said that, like, it's a safe thing. And I'm just looking at this girl like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't want to bring this, but this is the reason why people sometimes do not believe rape victims. I have to bring that in there because this girl is now weeping, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, if at this point, if nobody knew me, if I hadn't been here since literally 2020, January the 3rd, developed relationships with every member of staff, and quite literally every fucking person, everybody would just see me as this large black guy and would begin to assume that, oh my God, I have threatened this girl. Like, what? And she's there and she's all like, oh, trying to guilt trip this lady into how, like, oh, because she's extended her stay and like she did it because the place was nice and everything, she needs to be moved. And the lady's like, no, it doesn't work like that. You pay for a bronze room. I don't have bronze rooms now. If you want to move, like, you must move. By the 24th of July, some people will move out and a bronze room will be available. Or if you want to move now, you can move to a silver room and you'll pay the difference. And this girl is still talking about how, because she felt it was safe and nice and a good place, that she, what's it called? She extended her stay. And I'm just looking at this girl like, you are studying a master's in supply chain management, which means you should at least be business oriented. And you can't understand the basics of how a fucking business works. I was just properly irritated at this point because I'm like, this was what I had laid out my own points, and the manager was like, oh, she understands. Like, how the fuck would you bang on somebody's door in the fucking middle of the night? Even if you want to be like, you're blind. I was talking to like and they were like, I didn't even think of the fact that you have a torch on your phone. Or you are in room E. The light switch is at room C. You just need the torch to get you from your room, past the door of room D, to the switch in between room D and C. And that's what your 30-year-old brain, maybe it's early onset dementia. Anyway, Mata was kind of like settled because she was talking about how like she has to stay with a friend. I'm like, well, I'm no longer involved in this situation. It's your business. Me still being trying to be a conflict resolution, conflict resolver. I was like, okay, like you've been here for a month. We haven't really interacted, but prior to this single incident, which occurred in response to an action for which you still have not taken responsibility for, have I actually ever made you feel some kind of way? Honestly. At this point, I was just trying to help the manager because I'm like, if you want, stay till January 4th. July the 24th. I'm not interacting with you. I quite literally have no fucking business with you. But she's still doing the whole weeping thing and staging the crying. I'm like, I'm done. So the manager is like, oh, it's fine. Like, since I have nothing to do. So I said, can I have a conversation with the manager? Separately, basically download apparently how she's had a problem with me, the whole thing, how I've been pushed. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to move again. Then I come upstairs to live my life. And the original thing that now turned out was she switched rooms with the friend. So now she's cleared out, which I am just like, divine fucking intervention. Like God has worked and removed obstacles from my path. Oh my God, this is so hot. I've removed obstacles from my path. So she's cleared out. I think the friend sleeps here in the night and has all her stuff still back in her room. I don't fucking care. I'm leaving in August. Anyway, so we've done a life update and a story time. This is like the longest video. I'm going to post it in 1080p because I don't have time to upload it in 4K. Because like, you guys should kind of understand. Yeah. So, thank you. If you want to drop comments as to better ways I could have handled the situation, feel free. Like, share, subscribe. Every subscribe is like a breath of cool air, which you can see. Obviously, oh my God, obviously need. That is under boob sweat right now. Yeah. So, thank you. Bye.